perfect plan. That was what John Buchanan, the coach of KKR, had. The perfect plan to take over the IPL, to revolutionize cricket, to make KKR not just the best IPL team, but the best sports franchise in the world. The perfect plan that was going to be such a disaster that not only would it hand KKR its worst season ever, but it would make John the laughingstock of the world. And today, we are gonna hear the story of that joke of a season. Now, for those of you who have seen the first part of this story, thanks a lot. You can straight away jump to this point in the video. And for the rest, a short summary is in order. John Buchanan, the director of cricketing ops in KKR, proposed a brand new theory, multiple captaincy. Now, there were many versions of this, but ultimately, he would zero in on what I like to call the puppet model, wherein he, along with some of his 8 different coaches, would spread throughout the stadium. And then, they would discuss everything happening in the match via walkie-talkie. Once they had made their decision, it would be conveyed to the captain via sign language. The captain on his end was just to follow that order without asking a single question. From setting the field to choosing the bowler to even which ball to bowl, the director from the pavilion would decide everything. Now obviously, to make this happen, they needed a captain that would be okay with being a puppet, which the current Dada was not. Hence, he was removed. In his place, the 27-year-old with no captaincy experience, Brendon McCullum, would be elevated. And I'm sure you can imagine the response people had to this idea. 2 months, 2 continuous months of roasting from the media and public alike. Just to give you a sense of how big this backlash was. On 19th April 2009, Anupam Mukherjee, a marketing specialist, just for fun, would decide to start a blog writing as a KKR insider. It was just a funny, vivid, over-the-top imagination of what being in KKR must feel like. But by 28th of April, that blog would become one of the most read cricketing journals in the world. But as the world seemed to be burning around him, John, sitting right in the middle of it, seemed fine. Because the way he saw it, if we win without him, fans will accept it. If we lose, it will be criticized as a poor decision and the bring back server calls will become deafening. So all he had to do now was win. And by winning, he didn't mean winning it all that year. All he had to do was do better than last year. And theoretically, once he corrected last year's mistakes, he should have the near perfect team. Cause here, this was the squad for KKR in 2008. This were the foreign players and this Indian. As you can see, the foreign players are loaded with well-known superstars, while the Indian side, yeah. But as per the rules, only 4 of those foreign players could actually play in the match, meaning most of them would simply warm the bench. So, all John had to do was in the upcoming transfer window, exchange your foreign players for high-end Indian players. They don't have to be better than the superstars. They just have to be better than the lot that you have got. It was such an obvious solution that for once, each and every cricket expert agreed on this. So obviously, when the transfer window ended, the new KKR lineup was completely unchanged. Because John had refused to let go of any of the foreign players, actually ending the second IPL auction with this lineup. 10 foreigners and 14 Indian players. Out of those 14, 2 would be sent back home after just 3 matches, that leaves 12. From those 12, 5 had just started their domestic career in that last 3 years, and for one, this was to be his debut domestic tournament. That left us with 4 with actual international experience, but 3 of them were either retired or dropped, leaving only one member from the current Indian team who had just had one of the worst years in his entire career. But it's okay, it's fine. You managed it last year without Gale, McCullum, Ponting or Shoaib. So surely, this year, with this much firepower present, it should be easy, right? All you have to do is get the foreigners mix right, and the good news is, they practically picked themselves. You need to have Gale and McCullum. That's a no-brainer. Then you need to pick a pace bowler between Murtuza, Henriques or Charles in case Ishan struggles. That leaves us with one spot, which then had to go to arguably the best limited over spinner in the world at the time, who had nearly single-handedly won the Asia Cup, had broken the world record in test on his debut, had become the second highest wicket taker in the 2009 T20 World Cup. Ajantha Mendis was the ace in the hole for this KKR team, especially when the first match was happening in Cape Town, a pitch that was unusually favoring spin. So there was no debate here, right? That's the lineup for the first match. And yup, no Mendis. And the result? Deccan's bundled KKR out, 401. The same thing happened again in the second match, but thankfully they were saved by the rain that time. And finally, when John did include him in the squad, and Mendis responded to it by taking 2 wickets for 19 runs, including that of the 42 and 21 balls Yusuf Pathan. You would think that at least now John had learnt his lesson. No. After playing him for 2 matches, Mendis was benched. This time for the rest of the meaningful series. Why, you ask? Cause there, in that third match, after the scores ended up tied, John told Mendis to bowl the super over, a decision that was opposed by the entire Indian squad cause they knew Yusuf was an extraordinary player of spin. But John would prevail, and Mendis' 4 balls would go for 6, dropped catch, 6 and 4, and then somebody had to be punished for losing them the game, right? And yet, even this absurdity was nothing in comparison to what John was about to do next. He would announce Sanjay Bangar and Akash Chopra are being sent back home after playing 1 inning each. The official reason, they didn't fit into our scheme of things. Well, just a few days back, you only were complaining that you lacked experienced Indian batsmen, and now this doesn't quite make sense now, does it? So obviously, it set off the rumors. How they too were the ones behind the fake IPL blog about how the management had been unhappy with John's spending and he was cutting costs at the expense of the players. But there would be one speculation that would be at the forefront, especially in players' minds. A speculation that would go from players' mouths to media's mics, ultimately being asked to McCullum himself. If the players don't perform in 1 or 2 matches, will they too be sent home? Now, to understand here, IPL at that point was just in its second year, and for most of the Indian players playing there, even the basic IPL salary was a sum that they could just dream of. Getting into the Indian team was as impossible as winning the lottery, so most players had to do part-time jobs to support their families. And now to come to know that even a single performance could get them thrown out at any moment, their golden chance, their very future taken away in an instant. So all of a sudden, the already non-performing players had the burden of the world on their shoulders. And the result? Match 4. Sachin and Jayasurya come together to score the second highest score that season. Ganguly and Hodge would take them to a fighting 71 for 2 in 10 overs. But the moment they got out, 97, all out. This wasn't just a loss. This was humiliation in full public view. A remonstration that finally caused John to panic. And he would call for an impromptu party followed by a full team press conference. The hope was that by showing a joint front, it would build camaraderie in the team and belief in the fans. But all such ideas were to go up in flames the moment Dada was asked. Would you have done anything differently had you been the captain? Now most were expecting, if not outright support, then some useless dribble like it's a tough situation, it's a hard position to be in. But what they got? I don't think I'll be able to answer that question. There would be a pin drop silence in the hall after that answer. McCullum looked like a lost puppy, simply unable to believe that Dada had not supported him. And then nearly in a panic, trying to calm everyone down, he would announce, if I can't inspire this bunch of talented people and reach the semi-final, then yes, I will resign. But what it would do was have the exact opposite effect. Because that statement combined with the rumors that the management was trying to sell off the team and the fact that SRK actually left the team to go home saying, I'll only return when the team actually starts winning. The players suddenly felt that everybody had given up on them. Like they had no hopes, no chances of even fighting back. And this, along with everything that had happened till now, was going to create a perfect storm. A storm that was going to create a record for the second most consecutive losses in IPL history. Match 6, first to collapse. Then somehow, using the turning pitch, Karthik Gale and Hodge bring them back into the match. But not having Mendis, Gale has to bowl the last over. A loss. Now you would think that somebody, that extensive coaching staff must have figured out the problem by now. They would have asked for an experienced player to go down in the fragile middle order and anchor them down. But this was to be unacceptable to John. As he saw it, strength had to counter strength, while weaknesses dealt with weaknesses. Hence, he would insist on having all of his heavy hitters bundled right up at the top. And the result? Hodge scores the first 50 of the team, they now require just 38 runs in 4 overs with 7 wickets in hands, and lost by 9 runs. The top order somehow stumbles to 153, even the bowling looks threatening at this time, but by now, the repeated losses have taken such a toll on the youngsters that the one thing that they had been doing well by this point, fielding, that too, gave out. 4 dropped catches in a row, resulting in them losing on the last ball of the match. Then an out-of-form Gambhir is dropped twice, his run-out missed, and is practically fed runs through misfields. Another loss. And by now, even the foreign players were beginning to feel the effect of John's brilliant tactics. Cause midway through the tournament, he had decreed, we are losing too many wickets in the power plays. So from now on, everybody has to play slow at the start. Save wickets. Attack later. There was someone like Brad Hodge who could flex his style as needed. This was fine. But for the rest, this meant going against their natural attacking game. Which meant that when the time to attack actually came, they were out of rhythm, which would cost them their wicket. So the fact that their 10th game, that last, nearly impossible chance to qualify, was to be lost with Agarkar outscoring the entire team sans Ganguly. It was damn near poetic. 10 matches, 8 losses, 7 of them in a row, and KKR were out. And among the storm of criticism that followed, there was one question that seemed to be oddly missing from the media. The question that now that they were out, would McCullum resign? Nobody in the press seemed to be even wanting to ask this question because frankly, it was just sad to see what McCullum had become. The pressures of captaincy seemed to have robbed him of any inkling of a form, and the resulting loss of confidence meant that he couldn't even talk to his team properly, merely being reduced as a punching bag for the media. After all, how even they were to know that he couldn't even scratch an itch without getting a hand signal from John. So this was the end. A defeated captain, a crumpled team, and nothing left to play for. This should have been it. But what actually happened was, now that the pressure had finally lifted, there seemed to be a new breath of life in this team, as evidenced by match 11, where we would see an astonishing sight of Ganguly coming in and calming McCullum down after he had played a risky shot. And McCullum visibly responded to it. It seemed like for a minute, the noises in his head went quiet, and slowly and gradually, he began to rise from the ashes. First boundaries came, then sixes, and soon McCullum was smiling. It wasn't the rehearsed post-match kind, but a smile that came from something that he hadn't felt in months. Freedom. And this carried on with a feeling too. Then after taking a spectacular diving catch, he would be mocked by his entire team. A scene warm enough that even ESPN would write that day. It was a private moment being celebrated in public. It was a moment of solidarity for a troubled skipper from a bunch of individuals who had failed to rally as a team. Until now. And even though they did lose in the end, it just didn't matter. Because for once, there were no walkie-talkies, no signs, no pressure, no fear of failure. Just the bat, just the ball, just the game. And soon enough, this feeling translated into results. The second last match against the second place Chennai, a target of 188, and McCullum scores 81 runs in just 48 balls, which along with 71 from Hussey, simply smother Chennai. The next match, this time against the defending champions in their do-or-die match. Not caring about the results, they decide to play Chal, just because it would feel bad to not let him play even a single match at his home. And Chal, on his IPL debut, would proceed to destroy Rajasthan. KKR ending their season of 9 consecutive losses with 2 back-to-back wins. And that was to become the final nail in the coffin for John's idea. Not only had his idea failed, but without it, the team had actually prospered. But personally, I don't think this was a failure of the idea. I believe that this was more of a failure of the person. Because in all of his grand planning, his meticulousness, his calculation, in his taste for perfection, John had forgotten the only thing that you couldn't plan for. People. The players that were to actually enact his plan on ground. And no strategy, no matter how brilliant, can ever work if the players don't believe in it, if they don't feel valued, if they have to live in constant fear. And having failed to take that into account, John had broken the very thing he was trying to build.